morning in the suburbs of Houston, the Henry family's house, home of the head of a large trading company, looked so quiet you'd think everything inside was peaceful. In truth, that quietness was as heavy as a thick fog. Breakfast was marked only by the clink of a spoon against a plate and Henry's grumbling voice. "Laura, your coffee is as weak as dishwater. Why don't you learn how they brew it at the Starbucks on the corner?" Laura just smiled faintly, saying nothing, her hands steadily slicing the toast. She was used to that kind of criticism. In her 50s, after more than 20 years of marriage, Laura knew her husband well, a man who believed was the center of the universe. The way Henry strode out the door in his crisp suit, adjusted his tie in the mirror, and whistled softly, it was like a silent proclamation. The world out there is waiting for a star. Once outside, Henry became a completely different man. He pulled out the spare phone hidden in his coat pocket and texted Nina, the young mistress he liked to call his angel. Instead of Laura's burnt toast smell, Henry's car carried the faint scent of cheap supermarket cologne. A patchwork kind of elegance, but Henry was convinced it made him dashing. Laura was different. She didn't nag, didn't lash out, but her bright, calm eyes caught every tiny change. The shirt he wore yesterday had a strange lipstick mark. An expensive Italian dinner receipt lay forgotten in his trouser pocket. Even the way he switched off his phone when she entered the living room. These were just puzzle pieces. Silently, Laura pieced them together without betraying so much as a sigh. Sometimes Henry liked to imagine that his wife was so meek she'd never suspect a thing. He was pleased with the thought of Laura being clueless, and even more pleased with the idea that he was a brilliant actor, a model husband by night, a charmer by noon. But Laura wasn't some naive spectator in his little play. She was more like a patient detective, quietly jotting down odd details in a small notebook. The days Henry came home late, the unfamiliar perfume, even the mysteriously new tie hanging in his closet. One afternoon, while Henry was on the phone talking business, Laura walked by and caught a snippet. "Yeah, I'll drop by tonight. Don't be mad at me, Angel." She pretended not to hear, and Henry, flashing a playful grin, said, "New colleague, you know how it is, gotta butter them up a bit." Laura smiled back. "You're really good at buttering people up. You'll be promoted in no time." The reply sounded gentle, but Henry had no idea it was a small trap in his wife's long-running investigation. Henry left the house with the air of a general heading to battle, while Laura stood by the window, watching his car disappear at the end of the street. She knew something was wrong, and her seasoned woman's instinct whispered. Behind that arrogant facade was a clumsy little fraud. But Laura didn't plan to make a scene. She chose silence, because sometimes silence is the sharpest knife of all. In the weeks that followed, Henry grew more skillful, or at least that's how he judged himself. He switched to an old model burner phone, bought an extra wallet to separate work money from personal life money. Henry fancied himself like a Hollywood spy, living two roles, the model husband and the charming lover. In reality, he was so clumsy that he left traces everywhere, like breadcrumbs leading straight to Hansel and Gretel's secret room. Laura began to notice clearer signs. A Starbucks receipt printed at 10 p.m. downtown, a credit card swipe at a luxury jewelry store, while Henry claimed he'd had a burger with a client at a cheap diner. Once, she caught him fussing over a small red gift box. Inside was a pale gold bracelet, glittering in a rather cheap way. A birthday gift for a colleague, Henry excused himself, shoving the box into his briefcase. Laura merely nodded and smiled. "How thoughtful of you. I'm sure she'll be touched." Henry, smug, never realized that her words were sharper than a razor blade. To be certain, Laura went to Sarah, her younger sister who, though only a high school teacher, was as quick-witted as any seasoned lawyer. Hearing Laura out, Sarah raised an eyebrow. "What are you planning to do? Follow him around?" "No, I just need to know the truth. And if the truth hurts you..." "I think I've been hurting for a long time, Sarah. Now I just want to know where the wound is so I can bandage it." Sarah became an unwilling detective's assistant. The sisters quietly gathered evidence, checking Henry's credit card records, reviewing footage from the neighbor's security camera, even using a fake social media account to track Nina, the young woman who constantly posted hazy photos featuring unfamiliar purses and fancy shoes. Sarah giggled when she spotted Henry's reflection accidentally captured in a bar window. My brother-in-law is worse than those 10th graders trying to hide beer in their gym lockers, Sarah remarked. Meanwhile, Henry was convinced he was being perfectly discreet. He rehearsed in front of the mirror, a stern voice for talking to his wife, a tender gaze for texting Nina. One day he even bragged to a coworker, "Laura completely trusts me. She's so sweet, never questions a thing." The comment made a friend sigh. Don't get cocky. Silent women are usually more dangerous than gunfire. But Henry just laughed it off. Laura didn't just collect evidence. She began setting up little tests. One morning she told her husband, "Henry, tonight I have a charity event at the church. I'll probably be home late." "Oh, great. Too bad because tonight I also have to entertain some clients." "Oh, what a coincidence. Where are you planning to eat?" The old Mexican place. You know, the one with the good tacos." Laura smiled. That evening, Sarah drove after Henry. He didn't go to any Mexican restaurant, but stopped at an upscale Italian place, sitting across from Nina, the girl in a blazing red dress like a warning light. Sarah took pictures and sent them to her sister immediately. Laura looked at her phone screen, sighed, yet a smile spread across her lips. The more clues she gathered, the more Laura realized Henry wasn't just unfaithful. He was clumsy to the point of being pitiful. He forgot to delete his lunch date with Nina from his calendar app, left taxi receipts in his shirt pocket, even brought home a scrap of paper reading, "Meet Angel at 8 p.m. Remember to spray Dior perfume." Laura almost burst out laughing. A man cheating and leaving notes as if reminding himself to go grocery shopping, she thought. Sarah, on the other hand, was delighted as if solving a puzzle. "See, sis? It's like watching a B-grade detective movie." "Not quite. This is my movie, not Netflix's." "But what are you going to do with all this evidence?" "Wait. When the time is right, I'll use it." Laura began playing the naive wife perfectly. She didn't question, didn't complain, even praised Henry for working so hard. That only made Henry more smug, more careless. He bought Nina even more gifts, dipping into the family's savings without a hint of guilt. This time the gift was a luxury handbag, something Nina flaunted on Instagram with the caption, "Thanks to my special one." Laura looked at the post, her eyes cold as ice, though her lips still smiled. She knew she had her silver bullet. Meanwhile, Henry grew indifferent to everything at home. He mocked Laura's out-of-date clothes, her voice as unfeminine, and even sneered at the dinners she cooked. "This chicken's so dry it's like sandpaper," he muttered, eyes glued to his phone. Laura stayed silent, simply adding another piece of chicken to his plate. "Then have a little more sandpaper to finish your meal." Henry didn't notice the barbs in her reply. One day Sarah asked, "Do you hate him?" Laura shook her head. "No. Hate only drains you. I just want him to see himself in the mirror without me having to scream at him." Another time, Henry stumbled home drunk at midnight, shoes askew, tie hanging loose. Laura eased him into a chair and made him a glass of lemonade. Henry chuckled, slurring, "You're so good to me, Laura. If I were you, I'd have divorced me long ago." Laura smiled gently. "Don't worry. You're not charming enough for me to waste the effort divorcing you." Henry nodded, thinking she was joking, then promptly passed out in the chair. After weeks of patience, Laura and Sarah had everything. Photos, receipts, even an audio recording of Henry promising to take Nina to Hawaii. Laura wasn't in a hurry. She waited for the perfect opportunity. Somewhere Henry couldn't run. Somewhere he'd have to face the truth in front of everyone. And that opportunity came sooner than she expected. The community's Model Cultural Family Awards ceremony, where Henry and Laura were invited as shining examples. How ironic. One weekend afternoon, Henry drove to a high-end shopping center in the suburbs, its gleaming windows reflecting his new coat and slicked-back hair. He walked into a luxury fashion boutique and chose the designer handbag Nina had been dreaming of. The sales clerk eagerly described the limited edition with its sky-high price tag, but Henry didn't care. He swiped his credit card with lavish confidence, unaware that Laura received a spending alert on her phone the very moment the transaction went through. That night, Henry brought the gift bag home, hiding it in the car trunk to avoid his wife's eyes. Laura pretended not to notice, but while he was showering, she quietly unlocked the car, silently snapping a photo of the handbag box. Her gaze was cold, but a faint, knowing smile curved her lips. Not a sad smile, but the smile of someone holding the trump card. The next morning, when Laura served Henry breakfast, he didn't even bother to thank her. "Why are the fried eggs so salty today?" Henry frowned. "Maybe the salt's jealous of you," Laura replied curtly. Henry burst out laughing, thinking his wife was joking. Little did he know it was a razor-sharp hint. Time went by, and Laura kept up her role as the gentle wife. She still laid out Henry's clothes, still sent him off each morning with "Have a good day at work." But inside, she was arranging each piece of her plan like a chessboard. Sarah, her younger sister, became her indispensable partner. Together they found a shop specializing in replicas, perfect copies of luxury handbags. Laura bought one identical to the bag Henry gave Nina, adding an extra twist by asking the shop owner to stitch one tiny seam out of line as a marker. "How do you plan to use it?" Sarah asked, eyes gleaming like a student discovering an exciting experiment. "I'll give it back to Henry at just the right moment," Laura replied. "I'm starting to feel sorry for my brother-in-law." "Don't. Men who think they're clever usually need a lesson they'll never forget." Henry grew even more indifferent to his family. He came home late again and again, claiming meetings or business dinners when in fact he was with Nina. Family dinners turned into Laura's quiet monologues and the clinking of silverware on plates. One evening, Henry was texting and laughing to himself while eating. Laura asked softly, "The company's fun these days, huh?" "Yeah, just some funny photos from colleagues." "What kind of photos make you forget to chew?" Laura smiled gently. Henry mumbled an excuse, never noticing his wife's eyes had turned as sharp as a scalpel. Another night, Henry staggered home drunk, mumbling, "My angel deserves everything. Laura doesn't understand." Laura helped him into bed, hearing every word clearly. She didn't get angry, didn't cry. She just smoothed the blanket over him, as if drawing the curtain over a play about to reach its climax. The luxury handbag soon appeared on Nina's Instagram with the caption, "Special gift from my love. Thank you, H." Laura and Sarah looked at the post and laughed without saying a word. Henry, meanwhile, felt triumphant, convinced he had scored points with his mistress, unaware he had just handed his wife another piece of evidence. To prepare for the community's Model Family Award ceremony, Laura secretly sent an invitation to Nina through a mutual friend. Nina, always eager to show off, accepted at once, then excitedly told Henry, "I got invited to the city's event. You should come too." Henry turned pale but forced a smile. "Oh, what a coincidence. I'm invited as well. But just don't make a scene, okay?" "Relax. I'll only watch," Nina said, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. While Henry busied himself shopping for a new suit for the ceremony, Laura quietly completed her plan. She placed the replica handbag into a gift box, adding a card that read, "To the woman you love most," just one short line, no name, no reproach. As the day of the ceremony drew near, Henry remained absurdly confident. He thought Laura was so gentle she would never suspect a thing. He even sneered, "Laura, are you really wearing that old dress? It's a big event." "I think it goes well with my new handbag," Laura answered softly. "What handbag?" Henry asked, puzzled. "Oh, it's a secret," she smiled. Henry shrugged, assuming his wife never cared about fashion, and the remark slid right past him. Sarah, meanwhile, could barely hide her excitement. She kept checking everything: the gift box, the replica bag, the event schedule. "You're sure you won't make a scene, right?" Sarah asked. "No need. A perfect strike doesn't need a bang. Just an echo deep enough to last," Laura replied, her calm voice chilling to the bone. Henry continued drowning in his affair, completely unaware that everything around him was being arranged by his wife with surgical precision. She didn't just want to expose him, she wanted to show the whole community a lesson. Arrogance and deceit, no matter how cunning, will always reveal themselves. The night before the ceremony, Henry lay in bed boasting, "Tomorrow I'll be awarded the Exemplary Family Certificate. I really am brilliant." Laura turned toward him, gently stroking his hair. "Yes, you really are brilliant. Tomorrow you'll stand out for sure." Henry laughed, unaware his wife was absolutely right, but not in the way he imagined. The Exemplary Family Award ceremony took place at the City Hall. Red banners hung everywhere, and fresh flowers lined the aisles. Couples appeared arm in arm, wearing happy smiles. Henry drove there with Laura, but inside he was anxious. Nina would also be present. He texted her a warning. Don't draw attention. We're just there to say hello. Nina replied with a winking face and a heart, hardly a reassuring sign. Laura wore a simple dark blue dress, her hair neatly tied up. In her hand was a designer handbag, actually a flawless replica of the one Henry had bought for Nina. Sarah accompanied them as a family event assistant, holding a camera and smiling mysteriously. Are you nervous? Sarah whispered. No, I'm just waiting for the chess game to reach checkmate, Laura replied, her calm voice making Sarah feel a little afraid. Inside the hall, people settled into their seats. Henry busied himself shaking hands with colleagues, not noticing Laura quietly handing a gift box to the organizers with a note. Please present this to the woman my husband loves most. Kindly open it publicly. The reception staff assumed it was a romantic surprise from a husband to his wife and cheerfully made a note. The ceremony went smoothly through the first half. Speeches, commendations, award presentations. Henry stood beside Laura receiving the exemplary family certificate, smiling broadly while his eyes darted around, searching for Nina. She wore a blazing red dress in the guest section, constantly lifting her phone to take photos. Henry was sweating, terrified Laura might notice, yet secretly thrilled to have both worlds of his life in one place. Then came the lucky draw for symbolic gifts. The host announced brightly, Today we have a special present from Mrs. Laura, Mr. Henry's wife, which will open right here on stage. Henry froze. Laura only tilted her head with a smile, as if curious to see what the gift might be herself. The staff opened the box, revealing a glittering designer handbag, identical to the one Nina had flaunted on Instagram. The hall erupted in murmurs. The host read the card aloud. To the woman you love most. Silence fell. The spotlight swung onto Henry, who was sweating as though standing trial. Everyone turned to Laura, assuming the gift was meant for her. But Nina, impatient and oblivious, squealed from the guest row, Oh my God, it's for me! Henry, you're so thoughtful! The entire auditorium exploded like a bomb. Some people stifled laughter, others stared wide-eyed in shock. Sarah's camera flashed like fireworks. Henry stammered, Nina, don't! Laura turned to her husband, her voice light as a breeze. So this is the woman you love most, is it? Thank you for confirming. Nina still hadn't sensed the danger, holding up her phone to live stream. Everyone, look! My boyfriend just gave me an expensive gift right at the awards ceremony. How amazing is that? The audience gasped, the organizers flustered. The host tried to restore order. There might be some kind of misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, Laura cut in, her voice clear but calm. This is the gift I prepared to honor, my husband's real relationship. Thank you, Nina, for showing up right on cue. The atmosphere froze solid. Henry's mouth hung open, his face pale as paper. Nina finally realized she had just made herself the star of a very unwanted show. Sarah didn't miss her chance, zooming in on Henry's strained smile. A few people in the hall secretly snapped photos. Others whispered, Look at that so-called exemplary family. Laura didn't scream or cry. She simply took the microphone and said, Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say this. Sometimes titles matter less than the truth. And the truth is, my family isn't as exemplary as you think. She turned to Henry with a light but icy smile. Henry, would you like to say something? Henry stammered, trying to string together excuses, but failing. Laura nodded, handing back the microphone. It's all right. You don't need to say anything. I think everyone here has seen enough. She walked off the stage amid murmurs and dozens of astonished stares, leaving Henry rooted in place. Sarah followed close behind, winking. That was a perfect checkmate. I give it 10 out of 10. It's not over yet, Laura replied evenly. The game's only finished its first round. The ceremony collapsed into chaos. Henry rushed after Laura into the parking lot, panicked. Laura, let me explain. Don't bother, Laura opened the car door, looking straight into his eyes. Save your explanations for your lawyer. You're going to divorce me? I'm going to live up to that title we just received, exemplary family. But exemplary isn't about certificates. It's about clearing the trash out of the house. Henry froze, speechless. Sarah, sitting in the back seat with arms crossed, muttered, Impressive. My sister's incredible. That night, social media was flooded with photos and videos of the golden moment from the ceremony. The story spread like wildfire. Husband caught cheating, exposed by wife live on stage. Laura switched off her phone, brewed a cup of hot tea, and savored the strange peace after the storm. Henry, meanwhile, was bombarded with calls from colleagues and friends. He tried to reach Nina, but she had blocked his number and wiped every shared photo from social media to avoid scandal. Henry realized he had lost his wife, his mistress, and his reputation, all in a single afternoon. Laura didn't rush to file for divorce. She let Henry stew in the public shame, forcing him to taste the consequences of his arrogance. Just a few days later, Henry apologized, even fell to his knees before Laura. But she only replied with one sentence: "Forgiveness is one thing. Trust is another, and I have no obligation to give you both." Sarah stood beside her, shaking her head. "Brother-in-law, this time you're really checkmated." Laura smiled. The chess game of life had ended exactly as she'd planned. No smashing, no screaming, just one precise move, and everything collapsed on its own. After the award ceremony turned into the city's laughingstock, Henry's family life was completely upended. Not in the tear-soaked, melodramatic way of a soap opera, but in a far more realistic fashion. Neighbors whispered, colleagues kept their distance. Even the delivery driver looked at Henry with eyes that said, "Ah, so you're that guy." Henry suffered sleepless nights. He realized Nina no longer wanted to be entangled with a washed-up star. She blocked his number, deleted their photos, and posted a cryptic status. When older men get greedy, all they have left is a body and a stack of outdated business cards. Henry read it, seething and humiliated. He typed out a message begging to meet, but before he could send it, the screen displayed, "The recipient has blocked you." At work, his boss called him in, tapping a finger on the desk. "I don't care whether you cheated or not, but you embarrassed the company. Our partners are laughing at us. You're suspended without pay for 3 months." Henry left the office with heavy shoulders. For the first time in his life, his tie didn't feel crisp and neat. It felt like a soft noose around his neck. He launched a Win Back the Wife campaign, roses in the morning, endless apologetic texts, a spaghetti dinner he cooked himself, half raw, half overdone. Laura accepted everything, but showed no reaction. She put the flowers in the kitchen corner, read his messages without replying, ate the spaghetti and gave only one comment: "It's edible." To Henry, it sounded like a royal pardon. Laura didn't file for divorce right away. She was busier, but not with grief. She joined a morning yoga club, took afternoon painting classes, occasionally met old friends for coffee. Her silence unnerved Henry more than any jealous rage could have. Sarah, the mischievous younger sister, dropped by from time to time, always armed with a jab. "Laura, should I hire a brass band to play the funeral march for this marriage?" "No need," Laura laughed. "I prefer jazz, soft but persistent." She never told Henry that she'd quietly met with a lawyer and prepared all the paperwork. Not as a threat, but to ensure that if he ever repeated his betrayal, all she'd need to do was sign her name. In one painting class, Laura met Alex, an architect who had taken early retirement. He wasn't young, he didn't brag, but he had a way of listening that put Laura at ease. They only talked about colors, about art, and sometimes about trips to Europe. Sarah's sharp eyes noticed. "My sister's got an admirer." "Don't be ridiculous," Laura smiled, cheeks faintly flushed. "Just a friend." A friend who makes you smile that much? Henry should take notes. Laura had no intention of retaliating with an affair, but Alex's presence made her realize something. Her life was not chained to Henry's shadow. She could choose her friends, her joys, even her happiness. One afternoon, Henry passed the living room and saw Laura laughing on the phone. Her voice was so gentle it made him jealous. When the call ended, Henry pressed her. "Who was that?" "An old friend?" A friend from painting class," Laura replied lightly. Henry swallowed hard. For the first time, he felt the same unease Laura had endured for years. From that day on, Henry changed his approach, not just apologizing, but actually learning to be a decent human being. He helped around the house, listened to Laura talk about her classes, even put his phone away during meals. Sarah teased, "What's this, Henry version 2.0? No more cosmic man mode?" "I just want to be ordinary," Henry sighed. An ordinary man whose wife forgives him. After a few months, Laura sat down with Henry. There was no argument, no tears. She spoke plainly. "Henry, you've turned this family into a joke. I'm not out for revenge, but I refuse to keep living in an illusion." I know. I regret everything. I'll prove. No need to prove it to me. Laura cut him off. Prove it to yourself. If you really want to change, do it for you, not just to keep me. Laura laid out two options. One, live together but in separate rooms for 6 months to see if Henry truly reforms. Two, divorce amicably, split assets fairly, no lawsuits. Henry chose the first option, not out of fear of losing money, but out of fear of losing Laura, the woman who never screamed, yet still brought him crashing down. This period wasn't easy. Henry had to learn how to wash dishes, vacuum, and remember Laura's birthday. Sarah plastered sticky notes all over the house as reminders, but still made Henry read them himself. Laura maintained her distance, polite and calm. From time to time, she went out for coffee with Alex or other friends, never hiding it, never offering explanations. Henry gradually realized that trust couldn't be bought back with bouquets or expensive gifts. It had to be rebuilt piece by piece through small, consistent actions. At the end of the 6-month trial period, Laura called Henry out to the porch. The afternoon sun was golden. Neighborhood kids were laughing nearby. She asked, "Do you feel any different?" "Yes, I feel a little less stupid," Henry said with an awkward smile. "Good, because I've decided to give you one more chance, but remember, this is the last one." Henry nodded, eyes glistening. Inside the house, Sarah peeked out and murmured, "This time my sister didn't lose, but she didn't have to win either. She just chose to play a different game." Laura didn't return to being the servant wife she once was. She kept attending her art classes, occasionally held small exhibits, even took short trips with Alex and some friends. Henry learned to respect her rather than just act remorseful. They were no longer the model family in other people's eyes, but to Laura, at least this family was becoming real. No pretending to be happy, no playing the part of the dutiful wife and successful husband, just two people relearning how to live together. And if Henry ever stumbled again, Laura was ready to walk away without a backward glance. No tricks, no stage show. Because in the chessboard of life, Laura now held every piece firmly in hand, and most importantly, she was no longer afraid to lose. 2 years later, the suburban Houston house no longer echoed with morning complaints. Henry still made terrible coffee, but at least he made it himself and drank it without criticizing Laura's dishwater brew. Laura hung a few of her own paintings in the living room, not to show off her talent, but to remind herself that life could be colored by her own hand, not granted by someone else. Sarah still dropped by, sipping tea while teasing. "Henry still sneaking around?" "As if I dare!" Henry raised both hands. "These days I'm under 24/7 good behavior surveillance." Laura gave a faint smile, saying nothing. She didn't need to watch him. You only monitor something you're afraid to lose. Laura wasn't afraid anymore. Alex, the art class friend, sometimes sent letters from Europe, telling stories about exhibitions. Laura replied with a few polite lines, sometimes a postcard she painted herself. Just a friend, nothing more. But his existence reminded Henry that love, if neglected, could always be cherished by someone else. Life never returned to normal because the old normal had been built on pretense. Instead, it became something more genuine. Fewer roses, more evenings washing dishes together, fewer promises, more small, quiet actions, less concern for public opinion, more looking each other straight in the eye. To Laura, marriage was no longer a gilded cage. It was simply a choice that fit today but could be released tomorrow. She didn't defeat Henry, nor did she lose to him. She simply won over herself, daring to live, daring to stay silent when needed, and daring to walk away with a smile at any moment. And Henry? He learned a lesson men should learn early. Never underestimate a gentle woman. They don't scream, but they remember everything. And when they fall silent, it means the game is almost over. The only question is whether they choose to make the final move. One afternoon, Laura was tending the garden when Henry brought out 2 cups of tea. "Do you think we're okay now?" he asked. Laura looked at the tea, then at him. "Whether we're okay depends on you. I'm always okay." She smiled, a smile that made Henry feel both relieved and terrified. For the first time in his life, he understood. You don't keep someone with chains or vows, but with daily kindness. And so the story closed. Not with fireworks, but with a quiet afternoon, 2 steaming cups of tea, and a woman who finally learned to love herself first. By the way, if you've read this far, and you're looking for practical knowledge with a touch of humor, check out Engineer Twin Huang on YouTube and hit that subscribe button. It's smart, it's insightful, and you might just get hooked after one watch.